Hola, muy buenos días. Good morning, everybody. Bon días a tothom. Bueno, desde el equipo de aulaPlaneta que queremos daros la bienvenida a esta undécima edición del Congreso ITworldEdu. Queremos que en estos 2 días que paséis os llenéis la mochila de experiencias, de aprendizaje, que carguéis también la pila de vuestra ilusión, que es súper importante, pero sobre todo que cuando lleguéis a vuestro centro educativo, que algo de lo que tengáis, de lo que hayáis cogido de aquí, lo podáis trasladar y adecuar a vuestra realidad. Para nosotros es un honor presentar al doctor Sugata Mitra, porque para nosotros también ha sido una gran inspiración. Y queríamos establecer un paralelismo entre el doctor Sugata Mitra y el proyecto aulaPlaneta. Fijaros, hace 15 años, bueno, o hace algún tiempo más, el doctor hizo un agujero en una pared y puso un ordenador. Y los niños fueron allí a ver qué era, no sabían lo que era, y ellos mismos, de manera autónoma, aprendieron a manejar el ordenador. Con el paso de las horas, prácticamente, el doctor Sugata Mitra se fijó que entre ellos aprendían y que unos se enseñaban a otros. Fijaros, el otro día, yo que me dedico a visitar las escuelas de toda España, estábamos en un colegio que acababa de adoptar aulaPlaneta. Los alumnos trabajan con tablets y le preguntábamos, oye, ¿qué diferencia hay entre lo que trabajaba el curso pasado y lo que trabajáis y cómo trabajáis ahora? Y nos decían ellos, oye, pues el curso pasado el profesor nos explicaba lo que veíamos en las tablets y este curso somos nosotros los que se lo explicamos a él. Y yo le decía, ¿pero cómo lo hacéis? ¿No? Y esta chica me decía, pues fíjate, nos juntamos en grupos y a partir de ahí decidimos cómo vamos a trasladar y desarrollamos todo el material. Bueno, a partir de ahí, fijaros, el doctor Sugata Mitra pensó, oye, si hacemos buenas preguntas, a él le gusta decir preguntas y respuestas, preguntas realmente motivadoras, dirigimos el aprendizaje. Motivamos al alumno, lógicamente un alumno con ganas de aprender, y a partir de ahí hizo The School in the Cloud, la escuela en la nube, y hoy por hoy es un proyecto fantástico que está por todo el mundo. Pues desde aulaPlaneta lo que hemos querido desarrollar es un proyecto totalmente diferente, que no solo trabaje desde un sistema, sino que trabaje en un espacio de aprendizaje para que el alumno tenga, como habéis visto, retos, desafíos, que construya su propio aprendizaje, pero lo más importante es que el profesor sea el que guíe y acompañe ese proceso que es tan importante y de manera sistémica que podamos trabajar y homogeneizar todo el proceso con recursos de calidad y digitales. Para terminar y a presentar al doctor Sugata Mitra, todos sabemos que hay que hacer un cambio, que el cambio está aquí. Pero me gusta terminar con una frase que me ha encantado y define muy bien todo este paralelismo que hoy he querido trasladar. Y dice, no dejáis, dice el doctor Sugata, no dejéis que el aprendizaje ocurra, permitid que el aprendizaje suceda. Ahora sí, os pido un fuerte aplauso para el doctor Sugata Mitra.
Well, good morning, and thank you for having me here. I think I'm back in Barcelona almost after 10 years. I really love this area, Spain in general and Catalonia in particular. So I'm very happy to be here. This is, my talk is not getting much easier to give. And I will explain to you why. Most of my work has to do with experiments. So you try an experiment, you measure the results, you publish it, and you say, this is how it works. Now this method works all right in the natural sciences. Let's suppose that I'm going to study how a pendulum works, like Galileo. So I make pendulums and I, measure them. I measure the time period. I do all sorts of things. And maybe this takes 2 or 3 years. Now you must understand that the pendulum itself does not change in this time. The laws of the pendulum remain the same, and I'm just finding them out. What is changing, what is very different about our times, and this is very important for teachers to understand, is that we are not studying laws which are static in time. We are living in a world where the rules of the game are changing as you measure them. That's really difficult. Because how do you come to a conclusion? So when I came here and I was thinking about what I would say today, I thought I would first sensitize you to the idea that the results that I'm going to tell you are from different parts of time over the last 20 years. And you have to decide in what way they apply to what you are doing today. That's very important. Also, I think I don't need this microphone. So, all right. I realize now that each of the experiments that I will describe, they are like a clue. In detective novels, people find clues. So they are like clues, and these clues sort of add up together to produce a picture of children's education. What is that picture? Well, I'm going to present to you one such picture. I haven't done it before, simply because the picture appeared only very recently. So you will have to decide if that picture works for you or not. But let's start with what happened, not yesterday, but 20 years ago. It's the first clue. It was an experiment called the hole in the wall, you just heard briefly about. And I get surprised that it's 20 years ago. And it basically was done at a time when there were children who had never seen a computer, never heard of the internet. So what would happen if they just encounter one on the road? That was all that experiment was. What it did was that it produced a rather interesting result. It could have been that the children would look at this machine and they would ask some grown-up person, "Sir, please, can you explain to me what this is? Can you explain to me how it works?" But that is not what happened. What happened was that the children got into groups and they started to play with the internet. The internet of 1999, 20 years ago. Website to website to website, moving backwards, forwards. In a few weeks, downloading and installing games and then playing them. And people would ask me, "What's happening here? Who is teaching them?" And I would say, "Nobody." And back then, 20 years ago, this was an absurd answer, unbelievable answer. They would say, "Well, you mean to say if we leave a car, a new automobile, on the street with the door open and the key there, children will just learn how to drive? They'll kill themselves." And I would say, well, maybe we should realize that the hole in the wall is not a car. It's a different vehicle. And maybe they can teach themselves how to drive it. And maybe that's what they're doing. Anyway, so people then said, how? What's the mechanism? How does it work? Now, my background is not social science. My background is theoretical physics. So I had no idea how to answer that question of how they were teaching themselves. I followed whatever method I could think of. For example, this is a picture from 20 years ago. I used to just stand there looking at it. That's me on the right-hand top corner, okay, from 20 years back. Just looking down at the children, trying to figure out what. And I couldn't figure out anything because they were just talking like children to each other, pushing each other, and doing things. And then suddenly, a game on the screen. What's going on? I still didn't know. The World Bank got very interested at that time because at that time, people used to actually spend money, a lot of money, in teaching children how to use computers. There were courses, and some of you may remember this, expensive courses with which you learned how to use a computer. Those courses, would be taught by a teacher like me who would stand in the classroom and say, this is called a monitor, this is called a mouse, like that. So then the World Bank got interested that, well, this seems to be happening by itself. So who is teaching them? What is the mechanism? Can you reproduce this experiment many times to find out? And I did that. I reproduced the experiment in India, Cambodia, South Africa, in many, many different locations. I'm going to show you a video from 20 years ago, so a bad camera. But it will give you an idea of what used to happen. That in a remote location, in a village somewhere, you put a computer with the internet connection, turn it on, just leave it. And you see this. There's no sound. So, children just mixing and moving. From a distance, it looks almost like a beehive or insects. And then things would start happening on the screen. What does this mean for teaching and learning? I started doing a simple measurement of computer literacy. There's a test for it. So I would go to any village, take a random sample of children, give them this literacy test, month after month after month. And in 9 months, we noticed that the children had gone from a literacy level of 0 to that of the average office secretary in the West by themselves. I published this, and there was a lot of noise about the training industry, about profitability, about investment, and where should it go, etc. And I said, well, I don't know. Here are the numbers. So that was our first clue. Groups of children can learn to use the internet by themselves. The first clue. But under what conditions? And I must tell you that what is written at the bottom of the screen is extremely important. The children must be unsupervised. Okay? Why? Because if there is a supervisor, an adult, their behavior changes completely. Completely. They just stand there looking at you, tell me what to do next. So remove the supervisor. Then you get this insect-like behavior. Second condition, the screen must be big and visible to anyone who is passing by. Extremely important. We are all scared by what children might do if you give them the internet privately. But don't give them the internet privately, for heaven's sake. I cannot understand why this never happened to the television. The television never became tiny like that. And therefore, the television never became dangerous. It's big, it's in the living room, people watch it sometimes. Sometimes we quarrel over what to watch. That's about it. We don't do that with the internet, and that was a big mistake. So unsupervised groups with free access to the internet in big public screens. I learned that over years and years and years of many, many mistakes. Wherever any one of these conditions are violated, you don't get the right results. I came to England in 2006 on a big research project to the Newcastle University. I had been living and working in India for the rest of my life, so England was a new experience, and I thought, well, the hole in the wall, that chapter in my life, that's over. That's finished. I should do something more interesting than that. But in England, the school teacher started to contact me and said, why don't you do the hole in the wall experiment here? This is back in 2007. And I said, no, what's the point of doing that? I mean, you've got computers everywhere. You've got computers in your classroom. You don't have a problem with primary education. And besides, you cannot do the hole in the wall experiment in England. So they said, why not? And I said, well, if you do the hole in the wall experiment in England, all you'll get are frozen children. I mean, you know what English weather is like. So you can't do anything outdoors there. So anyway, that was a joke. But the thing is, they said, what can we do here to reproduce those Indian results? So I did the hole in the wall in England. But I did it inside out. You can do it yourself. It's very simple. Take a classroom, put in, let's say if you have 20 children, put 5 computers. Okay, with big screens, big screens. Put 5 computers, just scatter them around. Put them such that standing anywhere in the room, you can see all the 5 screens, that's all. And if you're working on one of them, then by looking around, you can see all the other 4 screens. That's important. Now let all the children in and ask them a question. As simple as that. Stand back. Don't interfere. You'll see the hole in the wall, wherever you do it. So what happens? The same buzzing, milling around like insects, this and that, and then the answers to complex questions. We gave it a name. We called it self-organized learning environments. Kind of obvious, self-organized, it's done by the children. An environment, the classroom with the 5 computers, and learning. The idea started to spread in northeastern England. Newcastle is in the northeast corner of England, a few miles below the Scottish border. So it started spreading over there from, not by education ministries, not by companies. It spread from teacher to teacher by word of mouth, from staff room to staff room. And what was the word of mouth? Oh, there's a fantastic new way. If you have not prepared for your lesson, do a Sugata. Okay? That's how it spread. So it started spreading. It spread all over the place. It finally landed itself in southern England, London, bigger schools, then into Europe. It traveled, surprisingly, from there in 2 jumps. I used to get called for conferences like this, and wherever I would go, a few teachers, and I hope it will happen here, a few teachers will go back to the classroom and try it. The first move happened in Melbourne, Australia. There were 3,000 school principals in a conference, and I, explained the idea of souls. 2 people picked it up. That is the efficiency of my lectures. 2 out of 3,000. Okay. They picked it up and they went back to their schools, and then they started talking and said, hey, this thing works. You don't have to do anything, just ask the right question and sit back. It spread all through the state of Victoria, then up north, then into New Zealand. Around the same time, I got invited to Buenos Aires. 2005, I think. It was a big conference of ELT teachers, English language teachers. I gave all the recent results. I got to go to a few schools and to show them how souls are done. It worked fine. I was a little nervous because I was thinking, well, here the internet will be in Spanish. I'm used to children dealing with it in English, but there was no problem at all. It was just as quick, sometimes faster. School after school after school in Buenos Aires, then in neighboring Uruguay, then in Chile, and in Colombia, and Brazil. It started spreading through the Spanish-speaking world. And then the United States. The United States moved last, but you know, when the United States moves, it moves like King Kong. 10,000 schools, or something like that. So that's what happened. So that's where it is now, self-organized learning environment. Clue number 2. Children can answer almost any question by themselves. Another way to put it, well, take a look at what souls look like.
And iPad can figure out where you are in the world.
Was Paul Cézanne. Cézanne was his second name and Paul was his first name. His paintings, he made them three-dimensional. So that was achieved by the front being lighter than the back of the painting. So that showed three-dimensional.
Let's just look at this question one more time and read what it says. So on the bottom, it says, how does the physical and climatic environment we have in Australia affect the way we
well, widely, but by far the largest part of Australia is
dos maiores estudiosos modernos, Sigmund Freud, os sonhos são...
Sigmund Freud, the dreams are...
So you get an idea. They're about souls. They're noisy. They are disorganized. You as a teacher will feel every moment, I should step in now. And I should say, quiet, quiet. Don't do it. Okay, that last instance you saw, I think, was either from Argentina or Chile, one of the places. The question was, why do we dream? And I first asked the children, you don't just write down the question. You walk in and you have a conversation. So I said, did anybody have a dream last night? So many children would raise their hands. So then I would say, okay, so were your eyes open when you were dreaming? Oh, no, they were closed. I said, oh, so you saw with your eyes closed? They said, yeah, I mean, we saw what our eyes were closed. So I said, that's really funny. I mean, I thought we can only see when our eyes are open. So can you just check this out for me? Why do we dream? So they started working, and within 30 or 40 minutes, they started to get these, maybe it's about things we wish. Maybe it's about things that happened yesterday or day before. And then, just as the period was coming to an end, that little girl said, by the way, I have found a man. His name is Sigmund Freud. And I said, oh, okay, it's the time up. Let's not go there. So that was that. But that's how souls are. They're very enjoyable. They're very enjoyable for children. They're very enjoyable for you as teachers, So, this was a hard sentence to write. I've been a teacher all my life. But the thing is that children in souls, self-organized learning environments, can learn anything by themselves. And you might say, what do you mean, anything? I mean, quantum mechanics? The answer is yes. Not quantum mechanics the way a PhD in physics does it, with mathematics, but they will understand it in their own 8-year, 9-year, 10-year-old way. Anything. Provided, and I write this sentence again and again at the bottom of every screen, okay? And I know that there is a school design expert sitting right in front of me. Big spaces, big computers, unsupervised, allow them to form a hive, and you'll get the results. So that was clue number 2. How do you encourage this process? Well, what I found was, and that's another story altogether, that if you take little children particularly, I'm talking about, let's say, 7 to 13-year-olds, if you just encourage them, don't interfere, don't discipline, but you just encourage them. If you say, oh, that's fantastic, I didn't know that. Just small sentences like that. It helps the whole process. I gave this method a name. I called it the method of the grandmother. Because, if you think about the way parents and teachers deal with children, it's to do with discipline. Do this, don't do that. The grandparents, and I use that as a kind of archetypal grandparent, uses a somewhat different method. They would say, instead of saying, don't do that, they would say, I've never done that, or something like that. It's a different method. It uses admiration instead of discipline to drive a learning spiral. I called my method the method of the grandmother. And I wrote an article in the Guardian newspaper in England saying, if you have an internet connection, if you are interested in children, can you give me 1 hour of your time every week for free? And I got hundreds and hundreds of responses. They formed what is called, or what my students called, the granny cloud. So the granny cloud sits up there, and you can beam them using Skype or WhatsApp into a school, into children who don't have access to suitable resources, and they just encourage. It exists now as a website, grannycloud.org, and there are hundreds of people on it. Just to give you an idea of what a session looks like.
As fast as you can. You can't catch me. You say it. You can't catch me. I'm the gingerbread man. Well done. Very good. So again.
So this is happening across 5,000 miles between Newcastle and the city of Hyderabad in South India. What it does is that it changes the children's pronunciation in minutes. Not hours, not days, but in minutes. Because, they listen to the granny and they copy her. So I thought, well, this is really good. I mean, this is free. This can happen anywhere. And it's simple. Clue number 3. So children can, remember clue 1, they can learn to use the internet by themselves. Clue 2, they can answer almost any question by themselves given the right environment. Clue 3, they need encouragement to do this. So this was the result of the granny cloud bit, the presence, digital or physical. In a school such as you have here in Catalonia or in Spain, that you have a good teacher, you don't need to use the granny cloud. You be the granny for the session. That's all. You just admire them. Oh, that's very nice. Wow, go ahead, do it. I'll not interfere. So then, in 2013, I got this prize. It's a big prize called the TED Prize. And it was a lot of money, and I gave the money to the university, and we decided to do a research project with it. The project was to put it all together. Basically, 2 ideas. The idea of the self-organized learning environment and the idea of the granny cloud. What happens if we put it both together? And we decided to give it a name. We would call it the school in the cloud. So remember that school in the cloud is not a website. You know, people think that, oh, it's not a physical space. It is a physical school, like your schools. It's just that it has two components in it, self-organized learning environments and the granny cloud put together. I built 7 of these using the prize money, 5 in India and 2 in England, ranging all the way from the most inaccessible places that I could find to the urban middle class England. And over a 3-year period, we studied what would happen in these schools in the cloud. We measured basically just 2 things. Reading comprehension. In this case, in English, but it can be in any language. Reading comprehension over time and the ability to search the internet searching skills. I had to actually develop a test for it, and I know that there are big education companies sitting here. We need a test. We need a good test for it. So I have one which is rather crude. But anyway, so we measured these 2. Reading comprehension, internet searching skills. In these 7 places over a 3-year period of time. But here's some pictures of those places. This is the remotest I have. It's a village called Korakati, an area called the Sundarbans in India. It's where the Ganges River meets the Bay of Bengal. It forms the biggest riverine delta in the world, and it has nothing there. No healthcare, no electricity, no sanitation. It has a couple of things there. It has, for example, the Bengal tiger and crocodiles. Okay. So Korakati, this village, is in there. This is solar powered, and it's basically a glass enclosed area with 6 computers, big screens, seating, configurable seating arrangements, lots of children. That's it. This is a slightly better village in a more affluent area of Bengal, India. It's called Chandrakona. Similar structure. This time it's brick and thatched roof, 6 computers, etc. This is a urban lower middle class school in the western part of India, a state called Maharashtra, in a town called Fulton. And it's inside a school. Okay, so the school had a playground and we built it inside that playground. Again, public visibility, glass walls, big screens, and space. This is a village in Punjab, India, called Sidhuwal. And I got you this picture because it shows you all the characteristics of that space. Okay? The space, by the way, the paintings on the wall and everything is made by the children. I explained to the children what we want, and they built this space. And you can see them clustering around the computers there. This is Killingworth, England. Killingworth is the place where the steam engine was invented by George Stephenson. So this is a school in the cloud inside a school there called the George Stephenson High School. And it's a beautiful implementation of all the ideas that I had learned over those years of how to build a soul. You can make out just by looking that it's not a space meant for lectures. This is a school in Harlem, New York. I had very little money left by then. So I said, can you do it with, what's the smallest amount of money you can do this with? And they built this, floor-level seating, just the computers on the ground, and that's all. I couldn't make them break the windows to build bigger windows because the government said that is not allowed. Okay, I don't know why. Well, finally, I have a model in a village in Bengal. It's called Dasghara. I call it the Dasghara model. It's the cheapest that you can do inside a small school. If you have a little patch of ground, if you want to build it ground upwards, it's a hexagon made of glass. It's a hexagon because remember the beehives? The bees build it with hexagons. It's a hexagonal space and, 6 computers, etc. This is what it looks like inside. So I now have the 4th clue, the last clue that I have so far. It's a clue given to me by a child. It's a very strange sentence. In a school in London, I had asked the children, after they had done a soul session, I asked them, what is special about using the internet for learning? And one child said, on the internet, you know before you learn. Think about that. I think it's very profound. It's the biggest change that could happen to our profession as teachers. When children say, on the internet, you know before you learn. How do we deal with that? And what shall we do about it? I'll have just a few thoughts. So, another difficult sentence to write and to live with, but I think we have to do that. If you look at what happened during these experiments, remember I told you the rules of the game were changing as I was doing the experiments. In the last 20 years, the internet has converted traditional teaching into the least efficient and the most expensive way to learn anything. Okay, you don't like it? I don't like it also. But this is our world. This is our children's world. Okay? I know there'll be 100 questions. Do they really learn? Is that superficial learning? And this is, okay. But I keep that sentence there. So this is it, this is, I'm not going to show you lots and lots of graphs because they're very boring, but I'll show you 3 graphs. It took me 30 years to get 3 graphs, basically. Okay, after which the university retired me. They said enough. So here are the 3 graphs. The first on the left bottom, the hole in the wall. Straight upward line, the children being able to use the internet by themselves. You know that today. Any device, any little new phone that you have, if you have a problem with it, find the nearest 10-year-old and ask him, and they'll show you. That's what this bottom graph is trying to show. The middle one, internet searching skills. Well, obviously, if children are constantly looking for things on the internet, finding what is wrong and what is right, detecting what is doctrine and what is correct, and how do they do that? Because, you know why? Because they can see each other's screens, and because they can talk to each other. They self-correct. That ability also rises sharply with time. It's a wonderful ability. It's probably the most important ability that your child or your children will need for the rest of their lives, as opposed to knowing how a steam engine works. The top right-hand graph, reading comprehension. If you're constantly searching on the internet, you're looking for an answer, and you're reading off the screen, well, I should actually revise that to saying comprehension, media comprehension, because they also look at YouTube, they also look at all sorts of things. But their ability to comprehend, this is good, this is not good, this is correct, this is not correct, that ability goes up. It is an extremely important ability in today's world. All of us suffer from it, don't we? With this barrage of advertisements that keep coming off the internet. Little pieces of news, and you say, is this fake or is this correct? Should not our children learn how to make that distinction? Well, the school in the cloud does it. So that's the story of these 3 graphs. And it's telling us that what we call literacy is changing, has changed to a new literacy. A new literacy where, the old literacy was reading, writing, arithmetic. I would say the new literacy is comprehension, communication, and computing. If we change from one to the other, that's the change that our generation needs to make. Our children will be grateful if we do that for them. So schools in the cloud do a number of things. I talked to you about, reading comprehension, internet searching skills, They have good retention because they found the things themselves, so they remember it. And the last one, if you practice this method, the teachers start to change. They change quite dramatically from standing and talking to more gentle, laid back kind of behavior. So what should a teacher do? Many teachers ask me, so what's our role? Are we not needed? That's not true. Who's going to make the questions? That's our job. The big questions. Who's going to make those big questions? And having made the big question, to which often there are no answers, what should you say to the children? You should say, I don't know the answer. You go there, I'll go with you. On the internet, which is so vast, so interconnected, you cannot say, I will show you the way, which is what teachers used to do. You can't say that anymore. You can only say, you go there, I'll come with you. Well, just a few words about where we are right now. And I know that I have people from the government, I have people from the education companies sitting here, so you decide if this makes sense. Well, first of all, our assessment systems, the examination system is out of date. What do you do in the exam? Give children pieces of paper, give them a pencil, say, take away all your devices. Give me all your devices. No internet, no smartphones, nothing. I'll ask you a question. You can't talk to each other. Now answer. That's the exam. It's obsolete. That's not how life is lived. We've got to change that. What was that exam for? That exam was for what you see on the right-hand side of the screen. Offices from the 18th and 19th centuries. It was to produce people who could work in those offices, the clerks. They had to be able to read, write by hand, do arithmetic in their minds. Whole generations were prepared for that. Why are we preparing our children for that? Do you want your child to work in an 18th century office that doesn't exist anymore? You have to change the system. We need an assessment system which is more suitable for our times. Ask them a question and ask them to find the answer, whatever the method. Assessments need to change from just in case to just in time. Let me explain that in a moment. Just in case was that I will teach you all about a part of mathematics, right angle triangles. Why? Because just in case one day you need it. Okay? I will teach you how to solve a quadratic equation. Why? Because just in case if you go out of this hotel, across the street is standing a ferocious looking quadratic equation. And we should be able to solve it. But you're never going to solve a quadratic equation, for heaven's sake. Even if you did have to solve it, how will you do that today? You will just say, Alexa, help me. Okay? So, we don't need just in case. We need just in time. If you run across a problem, you've never seen the problem before, you should be able to take out your device. You should be able to talk to your friends. And you should be able to figure out the right answer in seconds. That's what we need right now. We need to change the curriculum from just in case to just in time. That's a more difficult thing to do. The curriculum consists of everything that we know. Everything that we have ever learned since the beginning of mankind. We want to put into our children's heads by the time they're 17, we think we are doing them a big favor. But all that is available right here on that phone. All of that. Why can't we make a curriculum of the big things that we don't know? It will be far more interesting to make a curriculum of the things we don't know. Children love it. If you tell little children, here's a question to which no one knows the answer, look at the engagement you'll get inside the classroom. So we need to change the curriculum from just in case to just in time. And lastly, where all my 4 clues are leading me, I'm sorry that I have to say this to you, it's very difficult. Are we looking at an age where knowing, which was so precious to us, Homo sapiens, where knowing is obsolete. Where in 20 years' time, you'll get a generation to whom if you say, do you know how to do whatever? And he says, not yes or no, but what does knowing mean? Why? Because you know these devices, these little things, they're shrinking in size. They will disappear. They have to. I don't know in what form. Maybe they'll go into our earrings or into rings, or I don't know, inside our eyes or whatever. Very soon, maybe in 5 years from now, you won't be able to tell if a child is consulting the internet or not. You will not be able to tell looking at me if I'm giving a speech or I'm reading from somebody else's web page. When that day happens, assessment will end. So I called this talk, The End of Knowing. So just back to ground, okay, your teachers, your administrators, what are some of the simple things that we need to do right now? Well, I think we need to introduce the internet as a subject. I tried doing that in the United States just a few weeks ago across 4 schools. I gave them the question, what is the internet? Little children, 7-year-olds, gave back the answer, it's a network. It's a network of thousands of computers, thousands of devices. Information flows across the network, sometimes wirelessly, sometimes 7-year-olds. The 14-year-olds and the 15-year-olds said, it's a collection of websites. And I said, oh my goodness, they're not seeing it. It's like asking people what's an elephant and people saying an elephant is a trunk. An elephant is 4 legs, as opposed to the elephant is a big animal. We need to put the internet as a subject, like physics or chemistry or maths. We need to introduce networking. There's a long name for it, complex dynamical systems. But we need to introduce that as a subject. That is the new physics of tomorrow. We need to change the curriculum into 3 parts. One part, the things that you need to live. Second part, the things that are nice to know, that everybody should know. The third part, things that you need to know in order to answer an exam until the system finishes. We need to do that. And finally, ladies and gentlemen, my plea to every government on this planet, to every educator on the planet, allow the use of the internet during exams. Okay? And don't tell me how bad that is. I think if we did a few of these, we might just help our children get into the future of learning. Thank you very much for listening.
Amazing. Thank you. Perfecto. Pues yo creo que hemos quedado todos impresionados del cambio. He escuchado un qué miedo cuando ha empezado a decir los niños se van a conectar a Internet y no vamos a saber ni cuándo están conectados. He oído caras de terror en la audiencia, pero todo bien. Y muchas gracias. Yo solo quiero tener las slides estas para poderlas repasar en casa porque muy, muy interesante. Y ahora el programa se divide en 5 partes. Es decir, aquí van a haber unas sesiones, pero también las habrá en la primera planta del hotel. Simplemente tenéis que coger las escaleras o el ascensor y subir hasta la primera planta. Tenéis toda la información en las páginas 4 y 5 del programa con todas las sesiones. Lo que vamos a hacer ahora es que vamos a dar unos minutos para los que quieran desplazarse, puedan levantarse y abandonar la sala rápidamente y los que quieran estar en las sesiones de aquí puedan quedarse. Pues muchísimas gracias.